Welcome to Meet the Candidates 2024, a voter education program brought to you by the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce. My name is Tim Zunker, and I am the president with the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Our hope is that these candidate interviews and profiles will help you, the voter, understand your choices when it comes to the 2024 election. We ask voters to arm themselves with the information necessary to make educated choices and to make casting your vote a priority. Please visit the Shakopee Chamber website at shakopee.org to find out more information about the upcoming election for Minnesota House of Representatives District 54B. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Representative Ben Bakeberg. Thank you for joining us, Ben. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for hosting this. Thank you for having me. My name is Ben Bakeberg, and I grew up in Cokato, Minnesota. Met my wife at the University of Northwestern in St. Paul. We have been blessed with 3 kids, and we currently reside in Jordan. I just finished my first term and am seeking re-election. And I served on the Education Finance and Education Policy Committees, and I was one of the founding members of the Suburban Solutions Caucus. And the whole purpose of that caucus is to try to solve problems that we are facing as everyday Minnesotans. Professionally, I've been in education my entire career. I've been a teacher, a coach, a paraprofessional, and I currently serve as a middle school principal. Fun fact, I'm the only current administrator serving in any level of state government that I'm aware of. So this perspective has given me a front row seat as to how this divisive political climate is hurting our kids and hurting our families. And I was raised that if you're going to complain about a problem, you better step up and do something about it. So that's why I'm running for re-election, to continue to be a common sense voice and to build strong families, build strong communities, and build strong schools.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Let's get into those questions.
All right.
What specific initiatives do you plan to champion at the legislature if reelected, and how do they align with the needs and priorities of our district?
It's a great question. You know, as I'm out talking with constituents, one of the consistent themes that I hear is concern about the direction that we are going in education. Just today in the Star Tribune, the MCA statewide test results were released, and we continue to see stagnant or declining results. That is a huge concern. And I think it's important that we note that this isn't the fault of our amazing teachers and educators that are working in our schools. This is a result of the misplaced priorities that we have seen frankly, in the last number of years with DFL leadership in control of education. So in order to address this crisis, I believe firmly that we need to provide funding and flexibility to our local school districts. Simply put, we need to trust our locally elected school leaders, the school boards, the superintendents, the principals, the teachers, anyone who works in a school. We need to trust them. You're going to hear a lot about historic investments in education in this upcoming cycle. You're going to get a lot of mailers about how people support education, but what they're not telling you is that there were over 65 mandates within the education bill. And very simply put, the way that I describe it, it's like me giving you $1,000. And just before I give you that $1,000, I tell you how you have to spend 900 of it. And you can do whatever you want with that last $100. But school districts are being strapped with burdensome mandates. We need to review these mandates, and then we need to repeal those mandates that are not helping kids learn. The second thing is literacy. We've seen a literacy crisis, and you'll hear about the READ Act. The READ Act is a really good start, but frankly, it is underfunded and overregulated. I was the chief author of the House Education Bill this last session, and we would have invested over $250 million to help kids learn how to read. The DFL spent $118 million. The difference is because we prioritized literacy, And we really see literacy as just like roads and bridges. It's an infrastructure investment for our kids, because if we teach kids to learn from grades, from birth to third grade, they'll take off and learn the rest of their life. But we have to invest in that. The last thing that I'm really proud of is truancy reform. And this is a bipartisan bill that another representative, Heather Keeler from the Moorhead area, and I worked on. And simply put, it's a study group that Representative Keeler and I worked on together to be able to really address what's happening from a truancy standpoint. And what truancy means is kids just aren't coming to school. So there's a lot of factors. It's a complicated issue. And what she and I decided was to work together on a bipartisan basis to be able to solve this issue. So there is some bipartisanship happening at the Capitol. Education should not be a partisan issue. We need to get back to representing our communities, not a political party or special interest groups. We need to restore balance to state government in order to work together to support our kids.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Next question. With the February budget forecast showing a surplus of $3.715 billion in the 2024-2025 biennium, but spending still projected to exceed revenue through fiscal year 2027, how do you plan to manage the state's finances effectively, and what priorities would you focus on to ensure a balanced budget or surplus?
Yeah, in order to answer the question, I think we have to go back a couple years. And at the start of this, the biennium that we just finished, Minnesota had an $18 billion surplus. We spent the entire $18 billion surplus, and then we raised taxes, and I should say the legislature, I didn't vote for that, but taxes were raised by another $10 billion for taxes and fees. So that was a growth in state government by over 40%. Common sense Minnesotans know that this is just unsustainable. So one example of growth in government was at the Department of Education. There were over 51 positions added at the Department of Education. In order to address the budget deficit that we see, I think we need to review and eliminate every single one of those positions that were added, just at a very basic level at the Department of Education. And that's just one level of state government. We could do that within each department. Another example is there were over $52 million given to nonprofit groups for grants. Now, some of those nonprofit groups do amazing work for kids. I just fundamentally believe that those nonprofits should have to come to the school district, and we should provide the funding to the school district. And then if the school district chooses to hire that nonprofit, they can do that. It shouldn't be funneled through the state. A second priority is addressing just the waste, fraud, and abuse that is rampant in Minnesota right now. There's a group called the Office of the Legislative Auditor. It's a nonpartisan group, and they have sent out multiple reports detailing the failures of these agencies' ability to stop wasteful spending. We must stop the wasteful spending, and we must address the fraud and hold agencies and criminals accountable when they are wasting our taxpayer dollars. The legislature is going to have to make some difficult decisions in the upcoming session because of the lack of responsible spending in this last biennium.
Great. Thank you, Ben. What measures do you propose to address the cost of living in Minnesota, particularly in terms of housing affordability and accessibility?
That's a great question. And I think we need to start with what is our common foundation. We all want to have affordable housing and have housing accessible to different levels of incomes across our community. But I think, honestly, we just disagree on how to get to that point. In this last session, there was a lot of talk and a lot of concern about the proposals that we're moving through. I heard from a lot of constituents about their concern about 4009 was the bill. But what we really need to do, in my opinion, is work with our local communities to address affordable housing and accessibility. Each city is different. The needs of Shakopee are different than the needs of Jordan and the needs of Prior Lake. A one-size-fits-all just does not work. I talked to a builder recently from our area, and he said that in 2019, a $500,000 home, building that same house today will cost about $1.2 million. That I was shocked to hear that. So my next logical question was why? And in his opinion, it was the cost of goods, it was interest rates, and it was just the over-regulation on the market. So two bill ideas that the Suburban Solutions Caucus came up with, and they're not the answer, but they're a way to help accessibility for families, is an interest rate buy down for first-time home buyers. And then another idea was a sales tax exemption on materials, on building materials, to help bring those costs down. Both of these solutions would help increase housing inventory, which would increase access to home ownership, and help families build generational wealth, and ultimately help families meet the American dream. And so that's what we want. Simply put, a one-size-fits-all does not work. We need to roll up our sleeves. We need to listen to our constituents, not special interests, and address the housing and accessibility issues in Minnesota.
Great. Thank you, Ben. What strategies do you support for workforce development to ensure Minnesota's economy remains competitive? And how do you plan to address workforce shortages in critical sectors like healthcare, manufacturing, and technology?
This is something I'm passionate about as an educator. Helping kids, helping people find their gifts and talents is something that I'm super passionate about. I recently was listening to a testifier in a committee that I'm on, and this testifier talked about the frustration about how these different state agencies, these different groups, work in isolation. And she said they work in silos, and we need to come together and work together to solve problems and remove barriers. That's what we should be doing at the state government level. And after serving as one term, or serving my first term, I would completely agree that we work in silos, and that's unfortunate. The consistent message that I hear from employers is that people are willing to work. They want to learn. The people that they have, they want to be able to support them to move through. And we talk a lot about reducing red tape and cutting taxes, which we should be doing. But if we don't have people to work the jobs, it doesn't matter what we do from that standpoint. So one way to address the workforce issue is to create robust pathways for students, for kids in high school, in college, but then also working with our community ed and outside organizations for adults that are shifting. One of the things that I recently talked to someone about is that if creating a pathway for a student to learn how to run a CNC mill, that student, when they graduate from high school, if they have that experience, they can earn close to $100,000 a year just going through high school and learning that specific skill on how to run a mill. It helps the student because they're graduating with a skill and an income that they can support a family, but it also helps the employer because the employer has established some relationships with the school or different organizations to be able to access workforce issues. So I firmly believe that the different state agencies need to work together. We need to create both public and private partnerships to be able to develop robust pathways to help people across the community. This is happening in other states across the U.S. We can do the same thing here, but we have to break down the silos in order to work together.
Great. Thank you, Ben. What is your approach to improving healthcare access and affordability in Minnesota? Are there any specific policies or reforms you believe would make a significant impact?
Yeah, we all want healthcare costs to be under control because it's a major factor for families and for businesses. And frankly, it plays into the workforce issues as well. So as I'm door knocking, what I routinely hear from people is that they're simply working just to pay for their healthcare costs. And that's really unfortunate. To be honest, this is a really complicated issue. And I've learned it's even more complicated in my first term. So I would just simply begin with my core values of listening and learning so that I can make informed decisions and lead the best that I can. When I've done that, what I've heard over and over is that people want choice and they want transparency so that they can make the best decisions with their providers. If we assume at the Capitol that we have all the answers, we're not going to make the best decisions for our communities, and our communities lose out when we do that.
Great. Thank you, Ben. And what is your position on the legalization of sports betting in Minnesota? If you support, how would you ensure the revenue generated is used effectively for the benefit of the state?
Yeah, this is not an easy issue for me, to be very honest. On one hand, I firmly believe that we should have the freedom to live our lives the way that we choose. Then on the other hand, I have significant concerns with people that struggle with gambling addiction. And my commitment is that I will weigh all of the perspectives and work together to craft legislation to meet the needs of our community.
Great. Thank you. That is all our questions. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to give your closing statement and message to the voters.
Thank you to the Shakopee Chamber. Thank you, Mr. Zunker, for hosting this. And thank you for taking the time to listen. One of the unfortunate things is we in Shakopee, Prior Lake, and Jordan, we don't have newspapers anymore. So trying to get information out to voters is difficult. So thank you for hosting this, and thank you for taking time to listen. In college, I decided to go into education because I was passionate about serving kids and influencing kids in a positive direction. I was challenged by some of my mentors to use my gifts to move into the principalship, and I did that. So in both of these roles, I got up every morning, or I continue to get up every morning as a principal, with the goal of simply speaking life into students and staff and helping our school move in a positive direction. To be honest, I'm deeply concerned about the direction that our state is headed, and I strongly believe that we need to restore balance in Minnesota. We need to get back to representing our communities, representing our constituents, not a political party, and certainly not special interest groups at the Capitol. We're not going to agree all the time. Many of you have reached out and said, I disagree on this or I agree on this, and I really, really appreciate that. But we're not going to agree all the time, and that's okay. We should have robust dialogue so we can learn from each other. But what I am committing to do is I will continue to listen. I will continue to learn so that I can lead the best that I can for our communities. That's the approach I've taken professionally as a teacher, a coach, and as a current principal. And that's what I will continue to do as I serve the people of Prior Lake, Jordan, Shakopee, and the surrounding townships. My name is Ben Bakeberg, and I would appreciate your support and your vote on November 5th.
Thank you, Ben. The views expressed in these interviews are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber is sponsoring these interviews as a service to the community and has gone to great lengths to ensure the objectivity. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate but seeks to provide you, the citizens and voters of Shakopee, with the information you need to make an informed choice. The Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau extends a sincere thank you to the candidates. Again, thank you, Ben, for joining us. We appreciate your time and your service to our community by running for office. You're performing an important service to us all. Again, thank you for joining us for this edition of Meet the Candidates 2024. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Bye-bye.